So I'm going to cover the slope solver today. Let's see. So I have a couple of indicators to help demonstrate what you can do with the slope solver. You see the white indicator, which is the SMA, and the red indicator is the EMA. So we can see on the SMA, right, it kind of dove down. We can see that the slope steepens right about here, right? It steepens a little bit, right? So with the slope solver, it doesn't just tell you, is an indicator sloping down or is it sloping up, but you can also use it to find a minimum amount of slope or maybe a maximum amount of slope, right? So in this case, minimum and maximum are kind of backwards, right? So when you're using the term minimum amount of slope, you're actually making sure that the indicator, or in this way, the moving average, has a certain steepness to it, right? You want it to be diving down or diving up, with a fair amount of steepness to it. Whereas if you're looking for a maximum amount of slope, basically you're looking for a certain flatness to the indicator, right? So, or you'd be looking for, this kind of minor downslope, but you're making sure it doesn't get too steep of a slope, so you can identify, a minimum amount of slope or a maximum amount of slope, and the BloodHound version 2 interface for the slope solver and other solvers, it makes it a lot easier now to also kind of identify a flat trending indicator. So you can now dial it in a lot easier to see if an indicator is kind of flat, like this looks here. Okay, so that introduction there as to what we're going to cover, let's get into this. All right, so let me put a slope solver on here. So there we go. So you can also grab solvers from the menu up here at the top as well. So, all right, so let's connect that in, and I'm going to make actually a bunch of these here. And, oh, sorry. Okay, actually, both of these moving averages are 55 period. All right, so I'm just going to go into the SMA. I'm going to work with that one first. Put a 55 period in there. That way it matches the white line is the SMA, red line is the EMA. So let's start off with probably what's the most typical thing that people are looking for, when looking at slope, which is at least a certain amount of slope. So, and I think normally when you're looking at a moving average on the price panel there, you're typically going to want to work in ticks. So let's see. Let's see what one tick of slope looks like so. All right, so if I hit apply and see, what am I on? The NASDAQ. Okay, yeah, so the NASDAQ's pretty volatile, so I guess, yeah, one tick of slope is pretty easy to to get to. So so we can see here where I previously kind of highlighted, right? This looks kind of flat, right? And so basically this is flat-ish, with within one tick of slope rising or falling here. Right? So actually on the NQ and on this time frame and the period for this, for these moving averages here, one tick's not actually all that much. So let's put in 2 ticks and see what we get. Right? So we can see there's a little more blank area here with no output. And let's go ahead and ramp this up to 5 ticks of slope now. There we go. So this is kind of what I was wanting to get to, right? So here where we can see the slope does kind of drop off even further, right? It's diving down a little steeper. And essentially, right, this is a minimum or at least 5 ticks of slope right there. So I think this is what seems to be kind of the question I get the most here, is identifying when an indicator, right, has a quote, steepness to it. Obviously that's, the steepness is subjective here. So, right, so there we go. So there's an example of at least 5 ticks. And then the opposite example of that is, I'm going to make a copy here, and we can identify when that moving average, is less than 5 ticks of slope. Well, let's put that in, and let me rename this most. So I'm going to keep the SMA 55 the same, and I'm going to go into the slope rules here, and I'm going to adjust this to at most, or in other words, maximum. So now we're looking for a maximum of 5 ticks. And so now we're going to get the opposite, right? So remember earlier, right, when this steep area here was 5 ticks or more of slope. And so actually, right now would be a kind of a good time to pause and explain what is slope when it comes to charting, right? So there's a huge misunderstanding out there, and it's unfortunate that I think basically all the trading coaches are teaching people the wrong terminology to use when you're looking at the angle of something on a chart, right? So in charting, there's no such thing as degrees, right? Everybody learns, to use the terminology degrees, obviously from school. And so I'm going to draw essentially what looks like a 45-degree angle here, right? And the reason why there's no such thing as degrees is because the y-axis is constantly changing up and down. So if I scroll forward, let's see if I can actually, you could barely see that the angle of the arrow changes a little bit. Let's see if I can do this. Yeah, there we go. Well, there's kind of a bad spot on the chart here, but you can see that as you scroll through, right, the angle is changing. Yeah, like right there. Yeah, you can definitely see the angle is changing. And if I do this, look, now that arrow is almost flat, right? So you can't use degrees on a chart because it all depends on your y-axis, right? How much is the y-axis getting compressed, right? If it's getting compressed a lot, then everything flattens out. So using degrees is useless when it comes to charting. So the way you measure the angle of something is using slope, and more specifically, as my first 2 examples are using, right, we're using 5 ticks of slope, and so typically you are going to want to use ticks when you're looking at the slope of something, of a moving average, and we'll get into this. We'll get into this a little more in depth later on. But indicators on their own subpanel, like the MACD, the stochastic, CCI, all those momentum, right? These indicators don't have ticks. So you want to measure indicators in their own subpanel, basically indicators that have their own scaling, separate from the price, are measured in points, right? So the MACD doesn't have a tick size, right? It's just it has its own value system. Yeah, there's no tick size for the MACD or the momentum or the stochastics. So from that standpoint, you'd want to use points, and I'm gonna do some examples of that later on here. All right. So, all right. So there's an example, right, of kind of looking for, a kind of a minor slope, versus having a minimum steepness, or at least a certain amount of slope, right? Two different examples there. And so next, let's look at identifying flatness, right? So identifying when your moving averages or whatever indicator, is flat. And let me undo the scaling there. And let's see here. I'll make another copy, paste that on there. All right, and this time we're going to look for flatness. Yeah, I think I probably should start off with 2 ticks of flatness to probably get any kind of results here. All right. So let's connect that up, and let's go into this slope rules there. Right, so now this time we're going to, oops, sorry, wrong side. We're going to look for a certain amount of flatness, right? And you can notice, you see how the menu changes now? So let's put this on flat. So we're looking for a flatness so within 2 ticks. So I'm going to start with 2 ticks, and we'll see what that looks like. And actually, yeah, that looks pretty good. Shrink that up a little bit. Yeah, maybe that's a little too much. It's kind of subjective there. Let's take a look. That looks pretty good. But, that doesn't really look flat. That looks like it has an angle to it. So let's go in and reduce this a little bit more, maybe 1.5 ticks of slope. There. See what that looks like. All right. Well, yeah, this is still technically flat. So that's looking a little better. And all right, so maybe my initial thought here of 1 tick of slope is actually pretty good. Let's just go with that. Yeah, there we go. There. 1 tick of flatness. So there we go. Obviously that looks nice and flat, right? Obviously when a moving average is rolling over, right, it's going to have some flatness to it there. But, depending on the, moving average and whatnot, we can see that there's one bar there where if we zoom in there, yeah, right, you can see that little hump in it, right? So it did shoot up on this up bar, but remember it's a 55 period as well. So, right, so one of these bars back here, was getting factored in and kind of shot it up there. So at least all of this now, there's no flatness being identified here, but definitely down here, as you would expect. So, there. All right. So that would be flatness. And this is probably uncommon here, but you never know. Somebody might want to use this where they're just checking to see if it's not flat, right? In other words, the opposite condition. And there we go. Right. Now, we can see here that not flat is basically giving us the opposite output. So we're getting long and short because we're not identifying the slope anymore. We're just identifying, is it flat or is it not flat? And so from that standpoint, you're going to get a long and a short output, right? So remember, these first solvers here are identifying the slope direction, but also they're identifying that the indicator, is not flat. In other words, it's not flat that less than 5 ticks. So, all right, so I'm going to put this one back there, like so. And let's see here. Yeah, let me go back to the 5 ticks of slope here. Let's go back in. And let's put this on points. Now I'm pretty sure there's probably nowhere where the SMA moves 5 points of slope. And yeah, I didn't think so. Yeah, 5 points of slope. My guess is you probably only see that if you move up to hourly charts or definitely daily charts, right? Something like that. So to kind of get this working again, we'll put in 1 1/4 points, right? Which is 5 ticks for the NQ. So we put that in, and there we go. Now we're kind of back to where we were when this was set to ticks. So anyways, just wanted to give a quick demonstration of that. Well, I guess while I'm on it, nobody uses Renko bars, so I'm not going to discuss what that is here. But ATRs, once in a great while, somebody might use ATRs. Let's actually see if we do get anything here. Let's see. Yeah, that's a little that is way too much. Probably a quarter, maybe a quarter of an ATR might work. Oh, there we go. Okay, yeah. So when it gets really steep there, yeah, we are seeing at least a quarter of an ATR, right? So again, remember the ATR spits out a value in points, of the volatility of your instrument that you're trading, right? And it spits that value out in points. So if you're going to use ATRs, remember ATRs are in points, so think in terms of points when you're putting a value in here, not ticks, right? And then also with the ATR, if you want to change the period, that's what the little settings icon here is for. You can go in here, and there you can see the ATR period, right? So right now defaulted to 100 period or 100 bars, right? So that way it's a pretty lengthy, smoothed out ATR there. And for those who are interested in learning about Renko bricks, which I know we've considered removing Renko bricks since nobody uses it, and it is kind of an obscure concept, which is probably why nobody uses it, but there is an explanation of it on the documentation page here. So let's see here. I'm going to go to the menu, the main menu here. Go to help. Go to documentation. There we go. So that'll bring up the website at least. And what we want to go to is the BloodHound side menu. And there's a page here on the solvers, right? So we're going to go to the confidence solvers, this page. And this discusses all the information that all the solvers have in common. Okay. So adding a solver, a brief explanation of all the solvers, and common solver settings, right? And then we have the different data input types, right? The data type, which, right, the input type there, or data type, right? So that's this, right? Are you using price, volume, and indicator value, swing point, linear regression, right? So that's the data type there. Right, so there it is, the fixed value, price, indicator value. Anyways, if we keep going down there, keep going down, and there we go. So setting distances, right? So with the slope solver, right, I've been giving examples of points, ticks, and ATRs. And so here's the explanation for bricks and ATRs as well, if you want to check that out. So there's the Renko bricks, and there's the ATRs. So, right. So again, that is on the confidence solvers page there. So again, from the BloodHound side menu, right, the confidence solvers is right there, and then all the solvers are listed underneath. And I guess just to continue on, like same thing with the logic nodes, right? The AND node, the OR node, the ratio node, right? There is a logic nodes page that kind of discusses what these nodes all have in common. And same thing with the function nodes, right? There's a page for the function nodes, and then all the individual function nodes are listed underneath there as well. All right. Okay, so getting back to the slope solver here. And let's see, so what is next to do? Let's see. All right, yeah, so my next example here, let's move on to the MACD. There. All right, I'm going to start from scratch here and just add a new slope solver. Let's connect that in, move that stuff up. All right, so let's change the indicator here now to the MACD. And I'm going to use the little search tool there. And where is it? There we go. There's our MACD. And again, I'm just using the default, excuse me, just using the default settings. And I'm going to look at the MACD line here. So pretty straightforward, right? If the MACD is sloping up, right, we get a long output, and then once it starts to slope down, we get a short, And you can do the same thing. You can check for a certain amount of slope. So let's say, we wanted to identify this little deep dive down. And I think that's probably going to identify this quick rise upward as well. Those look to be about the same kind of amount of slope there. But let's go find out. There, put that on, move that over. All right, so we're going to look for at least let's try 1 point of slope. So again, since we're using an indicator on its own subpanel, right? Everything you want to do should be in points. All right. If you use ticks, what's going to happen is you're going to get this convoluted formula that you're not going to understand, right? Because ticks is basically pulling the tick value from the instrument and adding that to the formula, for calculating the slope of the MACD or whatever indicator, right? So you're going to get this weird result, especially if you switch from an instrument where the tick size is in quarters, right, quarter of a point, to an instrument that moves in 1/100th, or say something like oil, right, moves in 1 penny is a tick, right? So those tick sizes are dramatically different, so if you do use ticks, you're going to get some kind of weird results. So just use points, and things will be a little more consistent there. But also, you got to consider what's the volatility of the instrument as well, right? So the MACD is going to move quite a bit differently on the NQ versus trading oil. So all right, anyways, let's see what 1 point looks like. Oh, and there we go. Right, so actually 1 point was a little too high there. Let's try, a quarter of a point. And so there we have it. Right. So I'll just put that back to 1 point. So, with when you're whether you're looking at a moving average or some indicator on its own panel, right? Everything that I kind of demonstrated with the SMA, right, also applies, right? So you can look to see if your MACD or whatever indicator is flattish, right, or not flat, or the standard rising or falling. So. Let's see. Yeah, I was also probably going to show some examples for the EMA, but I don't think that's really necessary. I think it's just going to be duplicating what I did for the SMA. So let me just remove the EMA there. Let's see. All right, so that's the example. So now let's kind of go through the settings here. Really, the slope solver doesn't have really only but one setting. The real settings are inside the rules window here, right? This is the real settings here. But on the property inspectors here, we do have a slope period. So what this does is this slope period parameter will further smooth out whatever your input is. All right, so it doesn't matter what your input is. Your input could be price, right? Could be volume, could be an indicator value. But what this does is it's applying the SMA formula to the input. So let's see here. Yeah. So let's switch to a 2 period of the MACD. So essentially it's taking the MACD and smoothing it with a 2 period SMA. Right, let's go to 3, right, so on and so forth. Right, so obviously we can see, you know, the output's going to adjust there. Right, let's go to a 5 period. Yeah, so basically it kind of smoothed all this out here. So now there's no short output anymore. We don't have a short output here, right? But the only thing remaining is these few areas here where there was a quick, fast rise, you know, so when you smooth that out, that's what you get. So somewhere where this kind of smoothing might be a little more beneficial is, let's see here. So I'm going to go back to, let's see, no, not that one. There we go. Yeah, let's look at the flatness there, right? Yeah, so here, right, we can see there's one bar in the middle of this kind of flat area here, where there's one bar, right, where the SMA dipped down a little bit, and then kind of flattened back out a little bit. So smoothing out something like flatness, I think, is probably where you find the most benefit. And there we go. So now it kind of filled that in. Right, so let's kind of go back and forth here. So there's no smoothing, and there is a 2 period smoothing, right? And of course, once you modify an indicator with some smoothing, you know, then obviously that also tends to shift things kind of forward, right? So there's always a trade-off when you decide to smooth an indicator. So all right. So really the slope period is really the only thing in there. The modifiers here, you know, those are common to all solvers here, but let's just, yeah, we'll run through these real quickly here, right? So we could invert this. So if we invert this, right, essentially you get the complete invert of an output. So we can see that this invert is essentially, or not essentially, but it is doing what the not flat does, right? So inverting is we just applied a logical not to the flat. So it's just giving you the not flat result there. Or we could, well, in this case, the swap is not going to do anything here because, let me turn that off, right? So here's the normal output. And because this is looking at flatness, it's giving you a long and a short, right? Because flat doesn't have a direction. So flat is typically going to give you a long and a short output, right? If for some reason you only want a long output when your indicator's flat, then you would want to go into the rules window there, and this is where you would turn off, and I gotta stop double clicking. There we go. And there, set that to 0, and I hit apply, and there you go. So now we only have a long output because I turned the short output off. I set that to 0. All right. So, or I could go into the evaluate and say only show me the long output, right? And I get the same result there. So the swap doesn't really isn't useful when your output has a long and a short. The swap would typically more be used when you do have a trending type of an output there. Let's kind of shrink that up a little bit. So now if I hit the swap button, that's a quick, easy way to reverse the outputs, like so. That way you can quickly see what's going on, or see the opposite result. So, but normally, I would say instead of using the swap button, there are cases where you just want to do something quickly, and that works. That's fine to use this, but sometimes, or probably the majority of times, if this is what you want, if you want the reversed output here all the time, then really what you should be doing is changing the condition that you're looking for. So let's reverse this to falling, and for the short output, we'll reverse it to rising, and then hit apply, right? And so, if this is what you're really looking for, to give you a short output when things are, what am I looking at least, yeah. So if you're looking for, say like a counter trend type of signal, all right? So one of the things I hear from time to time is when building a counter trend signal, people are looking for a moving average to hit a certain steepness, right? So remember, this is using the at least 5 ticks of steepness, right? So so this is kind of looking for extreme moves in the SMA, and so people will use that as kind of like a heads up that there could be a pullback or maybe a trend reversal. And so this, so that might be a practical use case that I see in this workshop, where you would want to reverse the conditions here, right? So in this case, if your SMA starts to move up really, really steep, then you might, the market might be preparing for a little counter trend or a pullback movement. And so in that case, you would want your slope solver to give you a short output because you're looking for a short signal eventually, right? So most likely you're probably going to generate your short signal a little bit later, but this will give you a heads up, so that's coming. So counter trend signals is probably the most common reason for reversing, right, the outputs here. So let me put these back to their defaults, like so. There we go. So again, to reiterate, the swap button is good for just a quick look, but if you for something more permanent, you should go into the rules window and reverse things to make it more permanent. So, let's see what else is there. All right, just one more quick thing here. So I'm going to copy the at least 5 ticks of slope, paste that down here, And this time, let's look at price instead of an indicator. Right. So with the slope solver, if we switch the input over to price, we can check to see if the close of each bar moved a certain amount of distance. Right? And actually, instead of 5 ticks, let's look for 5 points there. All right, so let's go into the rules window here, and let's switch this from ticks to points, like so. Hit OK, and we'll stretch this out, and let's see. Well, let's go to something maybe a little less rare. Let's go to 10 points. I think the less signals, I think the easier it is to kind of identify things. Yeah, there we go. Okay, there you go. It looks a little cleaner, right? So when the closing price, rises 10 points or drops 10 points, right? That's what the slope solver is now identifying, right? So on a bar by bar basis, it's identifying whenever that closing price moves 10 points or more. Right? So if you're looking for a minimum movement, of the closing price, or any other price, like from low price to low price, you can check for those minimum movements, something like that. So yeah, so over here, right, we can see obviously this bar closed down, and the next bar, a big move up, and so it moved 10 points up, and again moved 10 points up. So yeah, so there's another example of what you might be able to use the slope solver for. So I guess with this example, let me kind of go back to my discussion of what is a slope, or measuring an angle on charts, right? So remember the discussion that degrees don't apply to charting because your y-axis, is constantly scaling up and down. It's expanding and contracting. So you can't measure anything in degrees. So what is, if you're not measuring something in degrees, what are you measuring? You are literally measuring the movement from one bar to the next bar. So this solver, looking at, identifying when the close, moves 10 points up or down, that is exactly what the slope solver is doing. Is it's looking at your indicator, or the price of the bars, and it's just looking at how far did it move. And let me go back over here. Let's see, where was, okay, yeah, so right here. There. Right, so if we kind of go back to this SMA 55 of at least 5 ticks of slope, and then I'm also, to help visualize this, let's put another SMA on here. And let's switch that to a 55. There we go. So they're both SMA 55s, but this time I'm going to change the plot style to dot. Let's say, I think a 2 dot. Let's go 3. Yeah, there we go. All right. So with the dot style, it helps us better visualize how the indicator is moving, right? So what the slope of an indicator is, right, is you're taking the value from the previous bar and you're comparing it to the value of the next bar, right? So you're measuring this vertical distance. So let's see, what do we got? 1525 to 1650. So that was literally 5 ticks. Yeah. Well, actually, let's look at this. So 1524 to 1662. Yeah, so that's a little more than 5 points. Right? Just a tad bit more than 5 points. Or 5 ticks, sorry. But anyways, the point is that this, when you're looking at the slope of an indicator, the only thing that's reliable is measuring the vertical height that it moved from one bar to the next. You know, because again, there is no such thing as degrees, right? That looks steep now, but as the chart compresses, then now it looks flat, right? So, you know, so that is what the slope solver is actually doing. Is it's unless, of course, unless you start using the slope period, right? In which case you're averaging out kind of the movement amongst multiple bars, right? You're using the SMA averaging formula to average out those movements. So, but basically, you know, the slope of an indicator is the height in which it changed values. Right? So, all right. So with that, I believe that should conclude our tutorial on the slope solver. And it looks like Terry might have a follow-up question here. Terry's asking, can you use slope up or down on indicators? Yeah, so Terry, that's what I did back here. Well, I mean, I'm actually doing it on the SMA. That's exactly what this is doing on the SMA. So, although this is looking for a minimum, right, of 5 ticks of movement. So just to kind of give a more exaggerated point here. But let's see if, let me paste. Can I paste another solver? Nope. All right, let me copy this and paste a new one on here. And we'll just make this just the absolute slope up or down of the SMA 55. So, all right, so let me go into this solver and I'm going to go into the rules window here and let's just remove the ticks requirement there, right? So now we're looking to see, is the SMA rising, you know, at least 0 ticks. In other words, any amount, doesn't matter. You know, anything greater than 0 ticks, you know, is it rising or is it falling anything less than 0 ticks, right? In other words, 0 ticks would be perfectly flat. Right? So if you were checking for a flatness of 0 ticks, that means your indicator is perfectly flat. 0 amount of movement. Right? And that does happen from time to time, probably more often with the SMA, but that is pretty rare to ever see 0 ticks of flatness, just so you know. But anyway, so let's kind of put this back to, so this is the default settings for the slope solver, is checking to see if it's rising by 0 amounts or falling. So if we take a look at that and then go to our chart, right, there you go. So you'll see there is always an output here, unless that SMA is perfectly flat, which, now look at that. So yeah, remember back here, we were kind of using this for explaining, the flatness. And so look, we do actually have a bar that is perfectly flat. So if I really stretch that out, like so, there. So we have 5119 as the value for the SMA, and again 5119. So that right there is perfectly flat. And all right, so that was Terry's question, and it looks like there might be a follow-up here. Yeah, so Terry's asking, yeah, so that could be used on a secondary indicator like the MACD. I'm not sure what you mean by secondary, but yeah, you can use the slope solver on any indicator that you feed into it. So, earlier I did use the MACD as an example there. So, yeah, here's a solver here looking at the MACD, right, and even price, right. So again, right, so we can see on this solver here, the input type is set to price, so you can check to see if the closing price, or whatever price you want, it has moved a certain amount, right, or the MACD, or any other indicator. You can check the slope of any indicator out there, obviously, as long as it's plotting something, that could be read. So, all right. Well, if you have any other questions, let me know. Yeah, so Mark's asking, so what happens if you put in 10 ticks of movement? Yeah, probably on this 1 minute chart, it's probably going to cut everything out. Let's see. Yeah, let's shrink this up a lot. There. All right, let me shrink this up even more. There. All right. Yeah, so we'll just commandeer this 5-tick one here quickly and make that adjustment. All right, so let's put in 10 ticks and 10 ticks. Right. Hit apply. And yeah, I didn't think that NQ or the SMA was going to move 10 ticks, mainly because I'm going to cancel this. Let's see, yeah, that's back to 5 ticks. So if you hit the cancel button, right, it's going to forget all the changes you made there. So, but yeah, kind of going back to, remember this solver down here where we're looking for, it's looking for the closing price to move 10 points, not 10 ticks, but 10 points. And we can see that, yeah, the NASDAQ, at least on a 1 minute chart, is not even moving 10 points that often. So it doesn't surprise me that, the SMA 55 is not even moving 10 ticks. So, yeah. So you would need to see quite a few more outputs here, of the closing price moving more than 10 points here in order for them to add up in the SMA to just get to 10 ticks. Yeah. So again, obviously, the time frame that you're on affects how much your moving averages move. So, right, obviously, a higher time frame, you get longer or larger bars, right? You get more price movement, and of course, your moving averages are moving further too. So.